welcome guys back to the next episode. I think we're on like 84 at this point. So we're closing in 100, which is cool. We release one a week, so been doing this for a minute now. But today we have a super special guest. He is an absolute stud in the industry. For all of you pest control guys that don't know the lawn care world, you're about to get your mind blown. He's the founder of Augusta Lawn Care, which I say Augusta Nation. They have 150 plus locations. He's the CEO of Copilot. He's an author, and he's got a massive YouTube channel with lots of cool things going on. Welcome our guest, Mike Andes. Thanks for being here, dude.
Let's go, dude. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we've been trying to set this up for close to a year, I think. I reached out to you like a year ago. You're like, hey, in the spring.
Yeah. What's funny is because I said spring, I have to follow up and do it. But like right now, most of the time, I'm kind of like in monk mode, trying to get this book done and then getting ready for conference. But I appreciate you having me on, man. Yeah.
So first question that I always ask, because I just want to know like the high level people that are on here, is like who was Mike Andes as a sophomore or junior in high school? Like if you were friends in school, who were you?
Well, you'd have to define that a little bit more because like,
okay, you graduated way early, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was 13, I started college. So, when I was 15, 16, I was basically kind of in the transition of going from playing golf every single day to starting to buckle down on my last part of my pre-med. So lots of biochem, kinesiology, biomechanics. That was my jam. So at that period of time when I was 14, 15, 16, like all I could think about was medicine. All I could think about was health and nutrition, physiology, anatomy. I shadowed doctors all the time, different surgery, stuff like that. That was my jam. So that would have been like literally all I wanted to talk about.
That's wild. Because I think I know the story, but why don't you just kind of walk us through it, like how you made the transition from healthcare? You want to be a doctor, and then I think you went over somewhere, you realized that you couldn't make as big of an impact as you wanted to. So walk us through that.
I went over to Africa when I was 17, turning 18, right when I finished my pre-med, and I was already starting to apply to UW, LSU, a couple other medical schools. And so going through the MCAT and all that garbage, and which is like the test getting ready into medical school. So I went over there for 6 weeks, went to Kenya, a couple different smaller cities outside of Kenya, Kalangwari, Tigoni, to a couple different orphanages and then clinics. And so as a volunteer there, we did everything. Like I did everything from surgery, birthing. I spent a lot of time in the burn unit for the pediatrics. It was crazy cool. I did all sorts of procedures and all the rest of it. Well, coming back to the US, it's kind of a letdown when all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I'm going to lock in for another 8 or 10 years, going to a bunch of debt for one specialty that I'm going to probably spend 80 to 90% of my day doing the same 3 or 4 tasks. And even though, I wasn't a business owner at the time, besides what I did on the side to pay my way through college, I didn't have like employees or anything like that. I was still entrepreneurial to the fact of like, I know that I'm not going to want to do this for the next 40 years. And when I came to the US, like to your point, it was like, not necessarily that there was less impact as much as like most of your day was spent doing paperwork, figuring out how you were going to get paid in terms of through insurance providers. And I was like, look, if I'm going to go into business, I'm not going to do it in medicine. Cause like, I felt like it was just very difficult for me to be like, yeah, like, how are we going to get money from this person? Like, instead of just being like, I just want to help people all day long. And like in Africa, it was like the door opened, you help the person regardless of an injection, a surgery, whatever it was. And it was just like one right after the other. And we would literally visit 3 to 4 times as many patients in a day there compared to in the US. And that was what I missed. And I didn't want to be doing this for the next 40 years, especially in an industry that is a lot around legislation, a lot around politics, as well as it's completely governed by technology. So like a lot of the things I was passionate about in terms of surgery, I knew it was mostly become laparoscopic over the next 20 years, whether it be the brain surgeries I loved or heart surgery or spinal. And so I was like, look, I just can't commit the rest of like my 20s to doing something that for the rest of my career I'm locked in on that I might not love in 20 years. And so that's when I was like, okay, the only thing I know how to do is mow grass and start Augusta Lawn Care.
Crazy. What did your parents think when you wanted to just give up? Like, it's like, I'm done with all this. I'm done with healthcare. I'm going to go start a business. Like, spend all that money, all that time. Like, what did your parents say then?
They really didn't have an opinion, to be perfectly honest. Because when I was 12 and I was about to go into college, they sat me down like, hey, just FYI, you don't have to do this for us, and like you don't need to do it at all. Like you can take time off, you can work part time, you can do whatever you want. And so they never pushed me at all. So like to their credit, they weren't even part of the decision making when I was 17, 18 and bailed on medical school. A lot of professors and people I had gone to school with, they had their opinions and they said I was wasting talent and all that garbage. And I can't say that for the first 5 years, that was not a chip on my shoulder or something I was trying to prove. And then you kind of move past that and realize like, hey, I have to do this for my own satisfaction and own internal drive. But, that was definitely a conversation. If you would have talked to me at 22 when I wasn't making any money and almost had killed myself working out in the field, like I would have probably, not necessarily thought that was the best decision potentially.
Yeah. So at 12, how does one go to college at 12? Like I guess probably playing dinosaurs or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at 12. Like were your parents a big impact on that, or were you just that guy from day one?
Really, like there's several factors. It's like if you look at the book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, he literally breaks down like a lot of it is like it's not really an outlier. Like there's so many factors that fall into it, right? So for example, my brother's 2 years older than me, so he did kindergarten at home. Well, I was 3, so I just sat there because all I did was wanted to play with my brother. So like when he was learning the alphabet, I'm learning the alphabet. Well, I'm 3, right? So then when we move and he's in grade 1, I'm like, well, I'm not like going to stay at home by myself. I want to go with my brother. So I started kindergarten. Well, I'm doing kindergarten again. Well, I'm 4. Well, then at 5, my mom's like, well, you're tiny, dude. You're staying kindergarten again. So I actually kindergarten 3 times technically. So when you kind of start with that foundation, you're already so used to being ahead of your grade that you end up starting to like teach them a lot of the topics. And so that was kind of like all throughout grade school. I skipped several grades. Then I did 2 grades at 1 at home, and then went to community college to kind of get my associate's degree really fast. But really the point was like, I thought at the time I was going to become a doctor. So I'm like, look, I'm going to be in school forever. Like, let's get this over with. Cause like my objective is not to be in school. I hate school. I would rather just go help people like in actually doing surgeries. And so I was like, let's get through this as fast as possible. So at 11, we started Andy's Lawn Care, my brother and I, so we could pay our way through college because my parents didn't really have, they'd never gone to college. We never really had money. So it was like, we saw like college as our way out and like kind of getting out of what our family had been in for a lot of time. And seeing that pain, you're like, I'm just going to run as hard as I possibly can away from it. And so that's when we started Andy's Lawn Care in preparation to save up for college when I was 13.
Gotcha. So you started Andy's Lawn Care, and then when you come back into the industry, you're like, hey, this is what I know how to do. This is what I'm going to do. Side note real quick. If you Google your name, Mike Andes, one of the first questions that comes up is, how tall is Mike Andes? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, dude, let's go.
I was like, of all the questions that pop up on your Wikipedia, it's how tall is Mike Andes?
Smaller than you think.
Yeah. But anyway, side note. Okay, so you leave med school, you come do the start lawn care. Like first 5 years, did you almost killed yourself? I think I saw a video where like you're underneath the truck, right? And like your hood got caught in like the axle or PTO, right? Am I right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. And so first 5 years for any business is typically brutal. Like it's a rough spot to be. Take us through that time. Yeah.
So like you're juggling everything. There was really no systems or procedures. It was a matter of like, there's no money being made at the same time you're working crazy amounts of hours. And what's hard is when you leave a job where the harder you work, the longer you work and the more hours you put in, the more money you make. Then you switch to entrepreneurship where it's not directly linked or inextricably linked to how many hours you put in. That's very, very hard because you have no sort of feedback loop of like, work harder, make more money. And so that's why so many people give up during that time because, recently I've said it, it's like how I think about it is like dig, build, bury. Like you're digging and you're literally going down. Like you're making less money, working more hours, you're digging down. Then you build, you pour concrete and you put down rebar and you're building the foundation and then you bury it. Like you don't even want to think about those first 4 or 5 years because at that time was so painful and you had no recognition because everyone looked down on you. Like you're literally digging down into the ground. And then when you are successful, then you're 10, 15, whatever, no one actually looks down at the foundation. They look up at the building and they admire all the success you've had that's visible. But those moments, those first 3 to 5 years are imperative to build the foundation that the rest of your success is built on. And that's what those first 3-5 years are. It's just brutal. It just stinks.
So if you haven't heard about GorillaDesk yet, it's a super sick software. It's actually made by one of my really close friends, Chris Moreshi. So Chris built GorillaDesk to help streamline his own personal business over 10 years ago. But now GorillaDesk is used by over 4,000 companies. And today it's become one of the most premier platforms in our industry. So what's really unique about GorillaDesk is that it's a simple all-in-one solution that's really easy for your team to use. GorillaDesk offers a seamless onboard experience and best-in-class support with no additional cost. It's all included in your subscription. Inside the software, you'll find a whole suite of features features, scheduling, invoicing, routing, and sales pipelines, integrated VoIP, text messaging, and pretty much all the automation you're going to need, and much, much more. So if you guys are still relying on paper or spreadsheets or fighting with an old software, I highly recommend that you guys check out Gorilla Desk. So we have a link in our description. Click on that and it'll take you right to their free trial. Now let's get back to the show.
Like, did you have like mentors or coaches in that time period? Like when you were building this thing, how did you figure it out?
Not really. Like now I have a coach, but like back then, when you don't have any money, any coach you're going to get is going to be pretty lousy if you're paying somebody, to be perfectly honest. What you want to do is look for what are the mentors I can get for free: books, podcasts, audiobooks, podcasts like this. Like if you're in this industry, this is like the jam, right? And even 10 years ago when I started, I still remember going into my room, like on Castle Rock Drive. I was still living at home. I put in like landscape business course because I was like trying to figure it out. And like there was nothing for business. Now there is. There's plenty of people that are putting stuff out there, whether it be you're just getting started and like what kind of mower should I buy or what kind of sprayer should I buy? There's plenty. There's people that are doing like, grade 2.0, like level of marketing and advertising and how to do tracking. Like it's all there now. And so there's even less of an excuse that I need a mentor. I don't have someone. I don't know someone. Like the internet broke that excuse for us all. And so really like my first 5 years was probably like Gary Vee. It was probably like Grant Cardone. And I don't even follow those guys anymore. They annoy me, honestly, but like they got me started. And a lot of times those first 3 to 5 years, the thing that you need to be hearing is sales, 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 because that's what gives you the momentum and the revenue to actually then focus on operations and admin down the road. And so those are kind of like the people I kind of revolve around. Like I knew I needed to sell a lot.
At the end of 5 years, like, okay, now you have to like, did you hire a systems person, a process person? And how did you evolve into then saying, hey, I want to franchise this?
Kind of a linked question because around year 2 or 3 is when Liz came on board and was just my office person.
She's been there since almost day one then.
Yeah, she had been there for about a year or two when I got stuck underneath the dump truck. So she like really saved the business because there was at least someone to like keep the ship together while I was out. But really, without systems and procedures that were built, something happens to an owner like that, and most of the time we get wiped out. And so as the business grew, and then we started to become pretty profitable once we instituted pay for performance and systems, et cetera. And I had documented it on landscape business course and the videos I make and stuff, but like no one really listens. They look at you as like a consultant. And so I'm like, look, the only way if I actually want to change the level of professionalism in the landscape industry to actually get buy into these systems, to actually have skin in the game with these owners. And that is through franchising. And that's where we share the same brand, we share the same systems, we talk all the time. We share part of something together, and I can actually enforce certain systems. And so that's when we started franchising. Also in part due to the fact that someone like Liz, like Lee, who are still with me today, back then I knew I wouldn't be able to keep them if I just stayed at one location. So we probably franchised a good solid year before I expected to, in part because I was like, there's just no way they're going to stick around with me.
You're forced your hand, like almost golden handcuffs.
Yeah, in order for them to be able to continue growing themselves.
Right on. You brought up pay for performance, so we can jump to that real quick. There's a lot to talk about there. When you first started pay for performance, where were you at in revenue?
Let me think. So we were probably doing about 1.1 million.
And what made you where did you learn the pay for performance model? Did you read a book? Did you hear from someone else?
There was a couple good books around like piecework. Back in the day, Jack Stack has a couple good books about these things, but there was no here's the actual math. Here's how you break down the job. And here's what you do in all these scenarios that don't fall into the nice box. And so I had to create a simplified system for it. And hey, you give a percentage of labor revenue. You can't give them a percentage of revenue because you got materials and everything else baked in there. And then it's well, what if they go really fast and they have quality issues? Okay, well, we gotta have yellow slips or callbacks. And what happens during that? And what happens if you have non-revenue producing tasks? There had to be an natural answer for all these things. P4P is not new. The automotive industry has used this for a long time. Lots of different industries. It was just let's create a system that kind of checks all the boxes to be able to use in any sort of home service or labor industry. And there's people in pest control that use P4P, and they might only give 8 or 10% of labor revenue to the team because they have much higher margins, but they also have chemical costs. So these are the type of things that we really just try to really hone in and focus on. And I just saw the switch it made in my business. We literally went from not making any money the first 4 years to then 280,000 in distributions to myself. And I was working there 3% of the time as before. And so I was look, I know the pain I went through, and I knew I would have probably given up if I had a secondary option. And I would like hopefully to shorten my learning curve of 5 years, hopefully down to 2 or 3 for some people. And having those systems would have been super helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you. Pay performance, again, one of those things that change our business for sure. And then you decided like, hey, like some people are using this. I'm going to go make a software for this too.
It was really once we franchised and realizing a lot of their struggles around just adopting it. It was like, okay, we got to build this for ourselves, and then we sell it to the public to basically just pay the bills so we can keep developing on it. So we're in a huge transition now because we integrated with Copilot, and that's been helpful. So it kind of prevents double entry. But more importantly is we want to really, my goal is to get people to use P4P. And so whether it be integrated with Copilot, that's cool because it makes it people who use Copilot, it's easier to switch to P4P. But more importantly is we're really trying to focus right now on time clocks and making it a really great time clock. So like having the ability to ask for time off, things like that, so that everyone needs a time clock. And then what I can do is once they're in a time clock, I can just be like, hey, by the way, we know which people are most efficient. By the way, you can use P4P, pay for performance, to make your business more efficient. And so I don't want to like coax them into using the full system of P4P, where you do need to change certain elements of the business. It does take a whole mind shift when it comes to estimating and how you do your HR and everything. And so my goal though is to give them what they want, and then hopefully get them to what they need, which is, in my opinion, P4P.
Yeah, I agree. And then when did you decide to write the book? Right around the same time?
Yeah, right around the same time when we launched the software. It was really just a way of like, hey, here, if you don't use the software, here's just how to do it. Here's why to do it. And here's what happened to me in the process of switching from no profit to being profitable because of this one thing. And then the software just kind of grown since then.
For sure. And then in the beginning, did you get a lot of pushback from your workers at the time when you switched to pay for performance?
Well, if you do it correctly when you roll it out, assuming that your crew is more efficient once they're incentivized, you'll be fine because then we actually have a vote. And so like everyone but one person on the team voted to switch to P4P because they saw for 2 paychecks they were making an extra $300, $400, $500 as a bonus. Like no one's going to say no to that. And so, in the book and in like the free training I have on mikeandes.com/P4P, it's all free. Like you don't even need the software. The software just makes it so hopefully a little easier, but like you could literally do this in Excel, especially if you're a smaller business. The software just hopefully makes it a little bit faster.
Yeah, I agree. And then I know when the week that we switched, again, something that I had to learn the hard way, is that there was a holiday in that week. So it made it look like they made less money. So right out of the gate, they're like pushing back. But we worked through that. So if everyone's listening, just make sure when you implement P4P that first week is not a holiday.
Yeah, I always recommend if you do a 2-week, 2-pay period trial period where they actually get to choose between P4P and hourly. And then what you do is you make sure, to your point, that those are 2 pay periods that fall in kind of a generalized where they can make a good money. It's not like in the middle of your spring rush or when things are collapsing and breaking apart, like snow on the ground and stuff. Like, do it at a general time of the year where this is going to work. And then you sit down and you say, hey, which paycheck would you like? Like they're going to take the larger one. You do that twice, and then at the end you take a vote. And if they've taken the P4P one the past 2 weeks and they made an extra $1,000 this month, they're probably going to choose P4P.
And if they didn't, then I'm not sure what to say about that.
Well, then if they didn't, they're going to leave, and then your crew's going to become 20 to 30% more efficient simply because now they're incentivized, and you're going to make up for the fact that some people do leave. And that's what happened to us.
Yeah. So you were kind of forced, sounds like, to start the franchise, almost like you needed a second location. That second location, was the very first one a franchisee, or was the first one a partnership? So
we started with 9 franchises at the very, very beginning. And then as part of that, I started my second location because mine was kind of like the 10th one.
So you skipped like location number 2. You went from 1 to 9.
Yep. And I would recommend if someone was wanting to franchise to do the 3 to 4 locations. Sometimes you just learn the hard way.
Because one of my questions on here is like, okay, if you were to go back and do something different, what would you have done?
Yeah, I would have started 3 or 4 and really honed those in. It probably would have saved me like the first year and a half of just like realizing that certain systems had to be tweaked or like adjusted to accommodate multiple locations. But there's just so many things that in life in general, like if you just wait for it to be perfect, it'll never be ready. And so like for me, it came down to a matter of like, I knew I was doing it premature because we already were like, okay, maybe we just do multiple locations and do this the slower way. But then I had to ask myself, like, ultimately the reason I did franchising is to change the level of professionalism in the industry. It wasn't to get more locations myself. And so, I don't think anyone should really franchise unless there's a different motive behind just money. Because most of the time, if you have a good model, you just scale it yourself and you do it corporate, or you can do licensing and make much more money faster with less legal tape and legal issues. And so it's actually very rare for me to ever recommend someone do franchising because of just so many things that I had to figure out the first 3 years.
For sure. So going back, would you do franchising again, or would you do a corporate model, like a licensee?
It just depends. Like for me, I would say I would do franchising because like it's going to achieve what I want, which is 1,000 locations and have more impact on the industry. But if it was to make more money, like the franchise didn't make money for 3 years. I knew if I would have started second and third and fourth location, like one a year even, we would be doing more in revenue and in profit within a matter of 12 months. And so, and even up until last year when I had 7 locations, I made more money on my 7 locations than I did the franchise. And so it's just a matter of what do you want? If you're optimizing for revenue and profit, usually corporate expansion or licensing is the better route. To be perfectly honest, like franchising is just it to really, if you're really going to serve your owners well, if you're going to serve them well and actually produce the support that is required to make a successful brand, it is so expensive the first few years that you can't really make money until you're at 100 locations. And the only way to make money less than 100 locations is to deliver a subpar support product to the users and the owners, in which case you never get to 100 locations. And that's why like literally 98% of franchises never get past 100 locations. And the failure rate on them is so incredibly high is because most of the time we can never get enough momentum to get past 100 locations. And so, yeah, I know you're at like the hardest level. Like you're at 10 locations. I know exactly what it's like. Like I could talk to you for hours on like all the stuff like from 10 to 100 that changes and then 100 plus. Like, it's fun.
Well, those are my questions next. So
okay, go for it. Okay.
I have a couple of things. So you brought up a couple of topics, but since we're talking about it, walk us through the first 10. Obviously, that was like year one for you, different. Like a lot of stuff probably blew up there. But then talk us through 10 to 25 or 50, and then 50 and beyond.
Yeah. So 0 to 10 is simply a matter of hoping and praying. You just got to get 10. And so like, congrats to you. That's the hardest part. And so it is a matter of like, you need some sort of reputation, you need some sort of brand. Personal brand helps you a lot. Obviously, you create content, people create trust. They're really just trusting on you. They're betting on you 100%. And so like for my first 10, you're usually waiving fees. You're usually giving a lot of like whatever, you just need 10. Like you just got to get there. Because otherwise it's hard to sell people. And it's like most people would want to join when there's 100 or 200. And like the reason people want to join McDonald's is because there's thousands, and like it's probably going to work. And if 1,000 other people have done it and they're still franchisees, probably it means that they're making money. And so like when you have a track record, it's so much easier to sell a franchise. And so from 0 to 10, if you're trying to do franchising, which now I've just cut out like 99.99% of the audience, just want to be clear, because I don't believe most people should do franchising.
Well, we franchise, but all current 10 locations are corporately owned.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, so you haven't had to go through the grind, dude. The grind now, dude.
All 10 have been corporate locations from within. So
okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna flip this real quick. So why don't you keep doing corporate expansion?
That's probably where we're headed. But we have the franchise model there if we ever choose to.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Good for you.
We went through franchising last year, got it all done.
Yeah, it sounds so good. Like when people are like, oh, you mean like you're going to for $100,000 or whatever, you can throw the legal docs together and then you can just sell these licensing and people just give you money for your brand. It's like, oh, it's so easy. It's like, no, there's so much more. And it's so hard. So yeah, like the big shift in general going from corporate to franchising is you switch from you're no longer selling whatever product and service you are. You are selling a business model, and you're selling the fact that you have dedicated yourself to making that system better and better and better over time, and honing it and making it, improving it. And the systems that do well, franchising systems that do well, are the ones that are constantly investing in technology, constantly changing their systems and modifying and making them better. The ones that die, 98% of franchisors will not get past 100 locations and will fail. And the reason for that is because most of the time they think they can just put together FDD, they can sell, and they're actually usually pretty decent at selling, or they get inside of a brokerage that sells them for them, and it sells hopes and promises to franchisees that actually don't come to fruition. There's no improvement in support, there's no investment in technology, and within 5 years they go out of business. And unfortunately, the carnage that this leaves is two things: one, owners that have nothing to show for their investment, and then two, and I should say behind one is like broken relationships, families, employees that have been let down, a whole lot of issues. Secondly, is it gives franchising a really bad name. And in my opinion, franchising is the way for people to be able to start entrepreneurship, and is like having some training wheels on. They're a little bit restrictive, but they absolutely have a higher success rate, like across the board. And so I'm a huge proponent of franchising for entrepreneurship and predictability of profits and earnings. However, there are so many bad actors that until you get past 100 locations, people just don't even trust you. And it's very difficult. It's like selling online courses. There's just so many bad actors. As soon as you say you're selling an online course, you must be a scam artist. And so the only way to get through that noise is to simply just keep making the product better. And if you have sales projections or you have private equity behind you pushing you a whole bunch on selling, the problem is you usually spend so much of your time and energy on selling new locations, you don't actually hone the product in. So like this is Command Center. This has been one of the hardest. Or I'm in the corner. I'm in this corner right back here. Let's go. But like that's the hardest part about building the franchise. It does all the admin, and it has an option for the owner to be able to tap into everything from doing their profit and loss statements and payroll to running P4P, like email, to everything. That's the hardest thing to scale. Having 70 people be on the same page and have systems, and every single time you go from 10 to 50 to 100 locations, you have to reinvent that entire system from top to bottom. New software, new infrastructure, new systems, new teams, new people, new talent. And so that's very, very difficult. And that investment is the moat that makes the franchise worth something, right? And so most people are not willing to invest in that because a lot of times we as operators, I'm not going to kind of you just now, Jonas, it's like we know what it's like to build a location and make it profitable within 2 to 3 years and what those distributions look like. And franchising just doesn't look like that because you just keep plowing money into making the product better if you're going to be successful. And if you're like, well, I can just go sell 25 locations tomorrow and I'm not going to improve the product. Yeah, you'll be profitable. You're not going to maintain, retain, or get any new franchisees in. And that's why people will stall out at 20, 30, 40 locations. It's because no one wants to keep joining. No one wants to start multiple locations. They don't see the franchisor investing back into the product. And so I'm a huge proponent of franchising. I think I would love to be able to make it a much more popular thing in the service industry. Unfortunately, private equity and venture capitalists do get involved a lot of times and push people on sales and hitting certain numbers. And because of that, the franchisees are left kind of a secondary thought, and unfortunately.
So how did you stay away from PE?
Dude. Yeah, like so the first couple of years I kept entertaining it because like we were so cash strapped, and like even up until like last year, it's still really tough because like we plowed hundreds of thousands of dollars into stuff like Max AI, and we didn't collect a single penny from the owners on doing that. It was like, look, there's a value add, and we're going to keep investing in this on the long term. So that's really difficult. It's very tempting to take private equity. Someone offered, when they offer you millions of dollars to just like sign a document, you could take all this pain away, just sign right here, right? Like, it's tempting. The thing that kept me away is just seeing over and over and over again, and even mutual friends of ours that have said like, hey, once there's private equity involved, like it changes the game. And so as tempting as it is, I was able to get enough evidence of other people saying like, if you actually have this mission, like that mission will become secondary to making money and growing top line revenue and cutting out expenses and really changing the royalty structure of how we do things. And it would rip my heart out to do that. I would hate work every single day.
I agree. So I just read a super cool book, and it's called the Private Equity Playbook.
You wrote the book?
No, I read it yesterday.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I was like, dude, you wrote a book on private equity?
No, I read a book yesterday. It was fantastic.
What was it again?
The Private Equity Playbook.
Got it.
It's by Adam Coffey. Fantastic read. I mean, I think it's like 4 or 5 hours long on Audible. I mean, I listened to it one day. Like it was just very, very interesting. Just to like know what they're thinking and what their playbook is. It's really cool. But you talked about Max. That was one of my questions that I wanted to hit on. We talked about it before the show. Obviously, you spent a lot of money on it. Why don't you tell the listeners what Max is and what it does? And I mean, I've seen the videos. It's super cool. But walk us through that. That's pretty cool.
So first off, it makes me very happy you know who Max is. It's really more of a branding play because we renamed it. Really, it's just AI and technology and computers and servers and AWS, but really it's called Max. And so our whole goal, like even with like recently changing a lot of the branding around being Max. So Max is the dog, it's the mascot. And so our hope is that down the road, we keep automating certain parts of technology where people call in, they talk to Max. Max eventually shows up as a robot at their house and mow their lawn. Like that will eventually where we get to. They can talk down the road with technology to get a quote, immediately from Max, accept the job, get pricing, etc. But Max AI is essentially something we've been working on for about a year and a half to 2 years now. We started rolling it out last year, and I did a pretty pathetic job of rolling it out, to be perfectly honest. But the hope, the thing that I focus on is like, how can we just get a wave behind us? Like, where can we look at the tides of technology and where it's going? And so, for example, like if I look at labor, it's getting more and more costly. Right, in the past 5 years, it's probably gone up like 40% in some markets of just the cost of labor. Rent also going up, especially in markets where there's enough people who hire significant chunks of talent. What else is going up in terms of cost? Computers, office equipment, all these things are going up more and more and more expensive, probably 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation. So 6, 7, 8, 9% per year. These things are going up in cost. Now, the next question I have to ask is the efficiency and the quality of labor going up or down? I would argue it's going down. I would argue that because it's harder and harder to retain people, and people are staying at entry level positions instead of 3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 months now, it's harder to actually retain, keep the talent, pay the talent, train the talent, and a lot of people are going to tap out. They don't want to work 45 hours. They want to work 35. They want to work 30. They want to work part time. They want to work at home. And so all these inefficiencies start to stacking up to the point where I can confidently say that cost of labor is going up, cost of anything to do with a human is going up. Whereas the cost of technology is deflationary. It goes down over time. And so my goal is to be able to adopt that strategy far before everyone else will become commonplace. I believe in 5 to 10 years, it'll be very standard for any service business to have an AI agent that is going to take calls, at least take contact information, and basically be kind of like a voicemail, but get the information. So it's not one way. We know that people only 37% of the time leave a voice message, whereas with Max, over 70% of people will talk to him, leave all their information, and be able to be a registered lead. And guess what happens after they do that? They stop contacting other providers. And that's what I want them to do. And so the goal in building Max is, number one, to take calls 24/7. Because if you're open for, say, 40 hours out of the week in your office, that means that there's 128 hours in a week, like more than 70% of the hours in a week, there's no one answering the phone. And during that 70% plus of the hours, only 37% of people that call in wanting estimates never even get the phone answered and never leave a voicemail. And so, that's like low hanging fruit. We knew immediately just by tracking the numbers, we'd increase a lead count by like almost 15% simply by doing that. And when I look at the industry right now, because we have lawn care web design where I can track the number of leads coming in, they're year over year about 15% down in terms of number of leads. However, Augusta's about 1.5 to 2% increase. I have a pretty good sense a lot of that has to do with the fact that Max is able to simply just take all calls outside of hours and convert them into leads. And over time, that technology will just get better and better. Max will be able to handle customer service. He'll be able to take credit cards over the phone. He'll be able to sell jobs on the phone and not just collect their data. And so we just are constantly investing in that. I believe that we can beat people by like 3 to 4 years in terms of where everyone will be at. And so I think in 3, 4, 5 years, this will become commonplace. I believe in 5 years that I'll be able to cut out 60 to 70% of people answering the phones in terms of humans, and it'll all be able to be handled, most of it, by someone like by Max. But it'll only take like massive investments on the upfront. And then everyone's like, well, what are they going to do about those jobs? Well, first off, we're still hiring all the time. Secondly is those jobs will be more specialized, and I'll be able to pay them more. Because instead of answering a phone and collecting billing information, or answering the phone and talking about like very basic things like when's my next service, that can be handled for a fraction of the cost with technology. And then I can give those same people jobs doing QuickBooks, learning how to do accounting, learning how to run payroll. And those are the type of things that I can still hire, and we will still continue to hire humans to do that.
Super awesome. What do you think the next 5 years outside of the office look like in the industry?
I think software will take more and more of a role. I think robotics is still 15 to 20 years away. In my opinion, whoever will win robotics will come down to who has the largest footprint in the industry, and then who has the software to speak and collaborate with the hardware. And so hardware is very difficult from a technology standpoint. Software is much more agile. So I think that over the next 5 to 10 years, in-home services, like we're a good 5 years behind HubSpot and Salesforce in almost every software element and what we can do. And so, that's why we started Copilot. But ultimately, I think that's where the benefits are going to be for the next 10 years. And then whoever has the best software will be able to speak with the hardware of robotics the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Because you brought it up again, the software that you built, Copilot. Again, you already had the franchisees, but what made you decide, hey, I'm going to go all in on this thing?
First and foremost, my belief that software is where it's at. Then secondarily, like, we've used multiple CRMs and I like most of them. And like, I'm happy to say, like, even like, I would recommend to a lot of people the CRMs that we've been on. We've used Lawn Pro, we've used LMM, we've used Service Autopilot, and I think they should be used. And I would actually say that even as I speak right now, at least, I would recommend, based on the size of business, certain other other softwares. I believe in general, if someone's not using any software, just like choose anything, like just do anything, please. Then I would say that, like, when I look at where I know technology is going, and then the rate of innovation I'm seeing at these other CRMs, that's why we jumped in. And I just genuinely believe that in 5 or 10 years, we will either A, be where we're at now, which is 5 to 10 years behind HubSpot and these other technologies, or we'll get on the cutting edge. And so most of these CRMs are owned by private equity and venture capital. They're being controlled by people who aren't in the industry and don't actually care about these owners. And like, and it's easy to say, talk about, care about owners, but like, I hope that my track record speaks for itself when it read Augusta or like what we try to do. And that's like, I really just want these owners to succeed. I know what they're going through, and I feel like I have a unique advantage to be able to give the features they actually need, that actually move the needle. And a lot of the softwares that we have used in the past, they just stall out. They get to a certain level, they're making really good money, and then they simply go to private equity where they know they can raise prices by 30% immediately get debt on the business, do a leveraged buyout, take the thing public, and unfortunately, it just stalls innovation. So,
but I mean, you also had 150 people in beta too, right? Like you were just want to start a software that like everyone could use right away. Like I'm sure you had a few of your bigger players like using it as beta and testing. I'm assuming too, right? So you had strategically, like, once got up to a certain point, like, hey, we're going to switch everyone over to our software.
Yeah, like, dude, I made so many mistakes in this level. Like, we are literally just coming out of 5 months of me making massive mistake.
But to your credit, you were out there telling everyone that you made a mistake. Like, hey, this is not perfect yet. Like, hold on. Like, you putting yourself out there.
No one cares. I messed stuff up. It was all my fault. So I promised something that we were achieving, and we were really executing well on in terms of the roadmap, in terms of what we were going to be able to get done. And then like just allowed way too many people in, and like I should have stopped it. I should have cut off new signups. There's several things I could have done, and so like unfortunately I can't fix that, and I apologize that like we literally lost half our users. Over it, and like I deserve 0 of the users to have stuck with us, and so we're just coming out of that now, and I just hope that over the next 6 months we kind of win back trust, and a lot of the things that we've been doing on the back end to fix the problems will now become more evident. But there's no excuse. It was a horrible mistake, and we'll have to learn and grow from it.
Yeah, what was harder to start, lawn care or software?
Well, okay, there's different layers here, right? So lawn care business, very easy to start because everyone needs lawn care. It's very easy to determine long, short, grass, let's go. For you, it's like weeds, no weeds, let's go. Franchising was still harder than the software. The thing about the software part is it was a very public failure. Whereas with franchising, like I make mistakes all the time. So like every year, usually the poor franchisees, bless their heart, I usually drop the ball massively in one area. Because we're moving so quickly, I usually will forget to do like my due diligence on something or test it correctly or roll it. And I get better each year, but like I still make mistakes. And so the biggest one we've ever made though is Copilot. In terms of the way I roll it out and allowing a lot of the public users in at the same time. We brought in 150 locations from Augusta and just caused all sorts of infrastructure issues.
It just broke. You couldn't handle it?
Oh, dude, yeah, everything. Everything broke. Everything was breaking. Like every single part. It was really bad. And like we're just coming out of that. And so is it harder though than franchising? I would say no, because it's technical parts that like most of it is like zeros and ones. With franchising, there's lots of gray areas. Like what's right and wrong decision, you'll never make everyone happy. And so in my opinion, the franchising is difficult because you have a legal connection with someone like a marriage. And in a marriage, the reason it's difficult sometimes is because you have to stay with the person. There's an obligation on both parts, and you have made promises to each other to stay with each other. And so that is a different level than just dating, where it's like, you mess something up, I'm out, right? Different level of pain that is required. But it's also like, what's the long-term benefit of a long-term relationship? Well, you're going to have to get through those hard times. And so that's what, in my opinion, how a franchise is versus like licensing, which is very much like dating. It's like, hey, as long as you like us, pay us this monthly fee and you get access. And like, if you want to leave, who cares? And we don't care about you. We don't share brands. And so, franchising is difficult because you never, ever will make a decision. Not a single time will you make a decision and get full support. It's very difficult. And you're leading entrepreneurs and people who like breaking the rules. And they left their job because they wanted to make their own playbook. And then you're telling them that you can't do that. And that's not how it's going to happen. And even a great decision, one that I think is very positive for everyone, there'll still be a portion of people that they see that as negative. And so that can be very weird brain fart that happens versus with software, we fix bugs or there are bugs. It's binary. It's good or it's bad. More people made money or more people made less money. It's very easy to track. And so, but yeah, Copilot was a disaster. Our churn, this is the first time I've ever said this publicly, went up to as high as 12% every month, which means basically in 8 months, we would have lost all our users. And now we're finally down back to 2%. We're coming out of it. And I'm thankful for every user. If they are watching, my goodness, I really appreciate them all sticking with us. And down the road, I'll make good on a lot of the things that we couldn't do for them during the past 5 months. But that's why we built Copilot. And I think down the road, I think in a year or two, they'll all look like geniuses. I think the same thing about people the first 10 franchisees when we go public down the road. I want them with me at the Wall Street, not ringing the bell in, and because they took a massive risk on me, and I won't forget that.
Yeah, I love that you said that because one of my questions, but you already had to, what is the end game? And you just said you're going to go public someday.
So I think, in my opinion, we'll need a lot of money when robotics come around to still continue a moat. And I probably won't have enough money for that. Software's cheaper to develop. So even though we put millions into it, robotics will be a whole different level. And so I believe, I'm just guessing right now, it's a wild ankle guess at this point, that within 10 to 15 years, we'll go public. We'll kind of wrap out everything they're doing in terms of media, Copilot, P4P, and Augusta into one thing, and then we'll take it public. And so I can raise a bunch of money when going public and still maintain full control. So that's the big part is I want full control of this thing, but I can go public and have different types of class shares. So I can have class A versus class B. I can go in and still have control of the company, but be able to sell a big chunk of it off, raise money to then go do the robotic side of things. So I think that's what's going to happen. But eventually that's kind of my end goal. And I'd like to make the first 10 franchisees filthy rich.
That's awesome. Good for you. Acquisitions. Have you ever done any acquisitions?
On a smaller scale. So buying out several smaller lawn care businesses as we kind of grew, all of them were less than 30-40% of our revenue when we purchased them. So it was never we were doubling or tripling revenue. I've bought out my partner in the past in terms of Copilot. Originally started with the co-founder, bought him out 30%, things like that. But nothing I wouldn't say I'm a guru of acquisitions or anything like that.
Do you let your franchisees make acquisitions?
They can. Yep. Every day we have what we call Mike Mints Mastermind. So they all talk. And a lot of times, a lot of what they bring to the table is hey, someone in my market needs to sell. What do you think of this price? And valuations and stuff like that.
Awesome. When did you see the YouTube thing kind of start taking off? I remember watching your first videos, kind of my first videos, didn't get a lot of attention. But you saw the shift in YouTube. So what made you go all in that strategy?
What's funny is there really is no shift. If you look at my analytics and everything, it's just been this slow, constant little grind. And I've always told the media team, I think eventually it's going to hockey stick. But it's always been this slow grind. We've never really had anything pop off massively. We had a short that got 100 million views or whatever. But outside of that, nothing crazy. And so it's just a matter of I believe that the entrepreneurs who win are the ones who have the longest horizon, time horizon. And they think in terms of 10 and 20 year swings instead of 10 and 20, weeks to get rich. And so, the media, it has driven every single aspect of the businesses. Every single owner of Augusta has come through YouTube and the content. Every single person from Copilot. We don't run ads outside of my audience. So they all come from that. And so I'm very grateful for the community. And that's why I feel a lot of responsibility to make sure that how we run the businesses is serving them. Because none of this is possible. None of it without people from the community joining and supporting what we're trying to do. And so, but yeah, there was never an inflection. It was just a matter of keep investing into it, keep plowing money into it, keep losing money on it. It was our marketing strategy though as well. So from a content perspective, it was yes, we are creating content. We're trying to help the community in doing that. This is our marketing budget. So 7 full-time people that we just do video editing and doing all this other garbage. It's really that's our marketing budget. So
that's awesome. You said majority of your franchisees come through your YouTube?
Every single one, when they come to training, that's where they came from. Yeah. Sometimes they'll come from Facebook or Instagram or whatever, but they eventually usually land on YouTube because that's where like a long-term relationships are usually built there.
Yeah, it's really smart. And I think you're up to like 167,000 subs right now.
Come on now, 176. You got this out of the
176. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, something
That's
like
awesome.
that.
Yeah, but your YouTube has made a lot more money than my YouTube for sure. We just have a ton of shorts and that gone super viral, and we had like one video that got us to, like 60,000 subs. So like,
dude, let's go.
Yeah. So, but that was your marketing strategy. When you open up new locations, what is your marketing strategy going to? I've seen these videos, but when you open up a new location, like from 0 to 250,000, what is your marketing strategy going in?
Yeah. So I was just going to drop one thing in terms of like general like media stuff is like, I always recommend like to create one-on-one content, speak about what you have done. And so I'd say like, as we've grown the businesses, my audience has grown in part because like, I'm just talking about what I'm learning. Right. And so for anyone out there, it's like, I want to create content, like just talk about what you've done and what you're learning. And that'll be beneficial to some group of people. As you grow the business, you'll get more credibility and people will listen. And so, in 2020 is when I got my first media person, because I told him I would hire him full-time eventually. He's been doing mowing grass for like years with me. And so I'm like, hey, I know you love cameras. We'll go there. That is 2020. That's when COVID happened. And so you kind of rode that wave since, basically almost the past 4 years. In terms of local, like it is a matter of how much money do you have, right? Like you either have money or you have time. If you have money, you're going to invest in things like Facebook and Google that scale much easier and you get a lot of leads very quickly. But if you don't have money, you do have time. Knock on doors, do door hangers, hold a sign next to the road. So like, last year I went out for, 30 days to your point, and kind of like started one from scratch. And it was really just to show like, here's what you do. If you don't have money, you stand next to the road, you look like an absolute idiot, but you get leads like 1 or 2 an hour. Like, are you willing to do that? It's not fun. Like, trust me, you're breaking every single like social norm when you hold a sign next to the road or walk through a mall with a sign.
And then get kicked out of the mall.
Yeah. And got kicked out of like holding a sign because I was inside of a parking lot. It's like, you got to go on the sidewalk, dude. Like, so, I just think it's like how bad do you want it, right? Like how bad do you want to actually succeed? And that's why so many times when people say like, hey, we have nothing to lose, they win, is because there is no secondary option. I think what's very scary and the reason for a lot of quote unquote failures and quitting is the fact that we have 3 other options we have in our back pocket. Like, well, if this doesn't work, I'll go do this. And if this doesn't work, I'll go do that. Well, sometimes when you have your back against the wall, it's the best thing because like the only way through it is forward. And like you got to figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, that's how we built our business, knocking on doors. It's super uncomfortable. No, it's not fun, but it works. Just got to go put in the time. I know you showed us a quick picture of a command center. How is the new building coming along?
Yeah, right. So it's been like 3 years in permitting. So it's probably going to be, I'm hoping in a year we'll actually break ground, but I've said that for like the past 2 years. So not really putting my money on that, but supposedly that's the case. The problem with that is that we thought we were going to be in the building 2 years ago. So, if we moved in today, we'd basically at full capacity. So we are already planning like a second building on the land because it's like 5 acres. And so I'm hoping to kind of like build a campus eventually of as we grow the companies on that same piece of land. But the objective is to get like everyone in the same place, like Copilot in the same place, Augusta in the same place, my local shop in the same place, training for franchisees in the same place, the media team in the same place, instead of being so, kind of spread out.
Yeah, it's awesome. Couple of things I want to chat about before I let you go. Carnivore diet. I think you've been doing that for a few months. Like I started seeing you posting pictures like lift heavy things, eat meat or whatever. And I was like, dude, I've been doing this for 11 months. Like, when did that start?
Yeah. So I've seen several people in my family do it, and it was like revolutionary for them in terms of mental health, weight loss, et cetera. Like I don't need to lose necessarily a lot of weight. So I was like, you know what, if them eating meat is good, I can at least add more meat. So I don't go strict carnivore. I probably am more keto, but I eat a lot of meat. So it definitely like helps you definitely grow muscle a lot more when you're lifting heavy.
Yeah. And I, like I said, I'm a little older than you, but my joints feel like back in my early 30s. Like I feel so good at 40 than I felt in my early 30s. You have a new book coming out. Someone told me this, so I heard some of your franchisees talking about it. What's the new book and when's it coming out?
Yeah, so it's called Total Business Turnaround. And essentially, we've done about 30 or 40 public turnarounds on the videos. And so what I did is I took all 30 of those and try to put them in a rubric. Like, what are the commonalities between every single one of these? And the reason for that is because out of, every day now we're getting applications to be on the turnaround show. But I know that behind every one of those videos is another 100 or 200 people that would never apply because it's super embarrassing to have cameras stuck in your face when you're at your lowest point in your business. And so the hope is that they can use it as a kind of like a roadmap of like diagnosing and then prescribing what they need to do in their business if they are failing. So like we just go like, okay, here's the 13 reasons why. Number one, if you don't have no money, start here, right? If you can't get any new jobs, like here, if you have a broken compensation plan, no one's showing up to work, like start here. And so it's just a way to turn around a business without me having to be there. And I just made sure that like I could give this book to any of the people I went on turnaround and they could have read this and turned their business around. Because it's super, humbling and really tough to like, even the owners that allow us to come out, like they cry on camera and like there's really humiliating things shared because like there's no money in the bank and like they're stressed out and relationships are frayed. And so hopefully that the book can kind of serve as a way to hopefully turn the business around without me having to go.
Yeah. And what was the strategy behind the turnaround?
One-of-one content, like create something only you can do. And this is back to what I was saying, kind of like in terms of just if people want to make media in general, like just do what you can do. Like I feel like I'm uniquely capable to be able to look at a profit and loss statement and diagnose the issue in a labor-based business because I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of P&Ls and I've helped a lot of people via phone and video. So it's like, okay, I know I'm uniquely capable to do that. And I can show up at most of these businesses and within a matter of an hour or two, at least know why they're having a problem and what to do about it. And so that was the first part. And that one-on-one content, I think, is really interesting because there's a lot of other owners that are also struggling. And guess what? They don't go on social media and say anything about it. And like we all think that everyone's successful in business because that's the only stuff we see online. And so I didn't want to normalize failure. That's not the objective of the turnaround show. It is to realize that failure is a part of the journey. And most people who become successful actually had a moment just like you currently have. And so if I can just prevent people from quitting at the low, they'll eventually come back. They'll rebound. And there's a roadmap to get out of that situation. And so that's kind of the objective of it.
And you weren't charging anyone to go do that, right? You're just doing it pro bono?
Yeah. As soon as if we ever charged, it immediately flips like the dynamic of why I'm there for them to be vulnerable, share openly and honestly, and they want to change things. And if I ever threw a fee on it, it would be bad. So people can buy consultant calls. That's fine. I don't care. But if I'm going to go film it, I want it to be raw reaction. Like we're not staging anything. This is real conversations with real people, real employees. And it's really what The Profit on CNBC used to be. I don't know if you ever saw that show back in the day. Like I loved it. And they quit it like 3 or 4 years ago. I was like, this stinks. So we originally were like, hey, how can we kind of recreate that? And like, we just try to keep getting better every single video, honing in the production side. And it's really expensive and it's very time consuming, but like I'm in a position to be able to do it. And it's my way of giving to the community. I know when you give, people come back. Like people still want us to join Augusta and they want to join Copilot despite our flaws. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, it's super awesome. What does the next 5 years look like for you, Mike?
Dude, let's go. Really more of the same. Like there's nothing new. We're going to keep improving Augusta. We're going to keep selling locations. We're going to keep making the product better. Every single month we're changing and improving the support structure or the software or the back-end support and coaching. Like we're always changing it. Copilot's just going to keep getting better. We're going to keep adding features. I have like literally hundreds of a roadmap for like 4 years of feature stuff. Like we're just going to do more of the same. And I think really like that doing the boring work is such an important integral part of growing success. Is like no one wants to be in the foundation, so they quit. And then once they actually start getting success, they jump on and start a different building. It's like, what in the world? Just keep building. You already have momentum. And so like nothing's going to change. We're just going to keep doing the same thing and getting hopefully better at it every single time. So like there'll be turnaround videos every Friday. Those are going to keep coming out and they're going to keep getting better. And, and so it's just more of the same. Doing the boring work and getting the reps in is really the mantra for at least the next 5 years.
Awesome. When does that book come out?
I'm hoping to do it August 4th because that's when my book originally was launched, my very first one. And that was the same day I got stuck underneath the dump truck. And so it's like kind of like I'm hoping August 4th is when I can release it. So it's a lot of work. It's the most work I've ever put into a book or any piece of content. It's been 8 months. It's my coach kind of working on it with me. It's been a grind, but I'm hoping for August 4th.
That's awesome. What's the difference between a good franchisee and maybe a not so good franchisee? I
wouldn't classify or label them as good or bad, but I would classify them as who is who is a good candidate to be a franchisee and who should not be a franchisee. And this is something I've gotten more clear on, and we've gotten better in the past like year or two in terms of determining who, like we turn down 6 out of 7 people that want to join Augusta. So the reason is because most people shouldn't be franchisees. Most people should not be franchisors. But I think it's a massive positive if both parties realize their relationship is beneficial to each other and is co-beneficial. So I would say who makes a good franchisee is someone who likes systems and procedures, is willing to follow them, and even if they don't understand, has enough trust that what has been done in the past is replicatable. If you're probably not a great fit for a franchisee in terms of if you like full autonomy, you don't want to follow systems and procedures, you want to do whatever you want to do, you like to test and try things out, you kind of enjoy the process of like test, fail, and replicate, and like doing things over and over and beta testing. Whereas like if you want to join a franchise, it's like the goal is twofold. One is if you're new, the benefit is typically you cut out, instead of 5 years of pain, it's usually 2 to 3. Right? You cut out a large chunk of just the learning curve because you got to learn so many elements and build the systems and build the infrastructure that otherwise is just handed to you. The second reason someone would join is if they're already a larger business, and instead of having to scale, like that element of scaling can be fixed by just joining a franchise that has a ton of locations and already figured out all the problems with hiring and training general managers, getting an office staff set up, having it. What's the difference between a regional manager and a general manager? What happens when you have a person that's really good at sales as a general manager versus operations? And what do you do if someone wants to just start locations? Like these are the type of things that a franchise, if they've done 100 plus locations, usually has figured out, and you can just expedite yourself by 2 or 3 years. Again, just not a huge saving, like 2 or 3 years of saving of time, and hopefully just plug into their system and pour money on it. Like if you're bigger, that's what you want to look at a franchise. Like this is why like people like Shaq have like 405 guys or whatever. It's simply a matter of they realize that this is a proven system. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to hire a CEO and just pour money on it. And if I can get 20, 30% returns compared to 8 or 10% in the stock market, we have a winner. Right. And so that's really what I'm focused on, is like improving our unit economics on so many different levels. And that's why like Q4 is such a killer for this industry. So we're going like all in on Christmas lights, whole new brand, trademarks, websites, everything. I need the margins to be high enough to where once you hire a general manager, you hire a regional manager, and you want to go start 10 locations, it makes sense compared to putting that money just in this S&P 500. And so that's kind of like where my head's been at a lot. And I bet I'm going to go out on a limb and say, this book, Private Equity Playbook, has a lot to do with things like that. Like unit economics are so important, things like that.
And, like you guys know, you know the industry really well. Like that's the slowest time of the year for everyone. Like they're laying people off, and then they struggle with cash flow in the winter because they're afraid to let go of their employees, not allowed to like give them certain days to come back. And then they use all their cash flow and like just stay afloat or carry overhead.
Because they don't have season-specific offers for season-specific services. And so that Q4, in the green industry, I would venture to believe, based upon the P&Ls I've seen, if you take out 1 quarter, we're probably mostly 20% profitable. But 1 quarter of negative cash flow brings that down to 4, 5, 6%. And so we got to solve that 1Q and 1 quarter. And so I would recommend anyone, regardless of what industry you're in, like look at your P&L in terms of quarters and say, where's the problem? And then how do I create season-specific services and season-specific offers for that quarter to kill it? And turn that from an off season into your quote unquote spring rush with a different service.
Yeah. So what is the new brand called for the Christmas lights?
Augusta Christmas Lights. Let's go. Just gotta throw that hat on a Max, and we're off to the races. So we're going through the whole trademark process and like just making sure like there's no national brand around this. So we think we can dominate. Like from an SEO perspective, we're going to crush. Like in 5 years, I think people are going to think we make more money on Christmas lights than mowing. To be perfectly honest. There's just no one that's playing this game at what we think we can do. So anyway, that's kind of like hyperbole at this point. But the goal is just to make that Q4 where they can still accelerate and then go into spring rush with a lot of cash to be able to actually take all the leads that come pouring in during that time.
I'm going to end this with 2 last questions. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Okay, I underestimate how much work is required to be exceptional. And if you actually want to be the greatest, the amount of effort and time and energy that is required to make that recipe happen is far, far beyond what you are currently thinking. And so if you want to be the best in your market, if you want to be the best in your industry, if you want to be the best in your family, you want to make the most money, the amount of effort and energy and sacrifice required to make that happen is 10 times, 100 times what you think it is. And to be the exceptional Michael Jordan, the amount of effort and time and energy that went into that is vastly underestimated. The person that plays pickup basketball and the person that's pushing around a lawnmower, people call it chucking a truck or whatever, vastly underestimates just how much time and energy and effort goes into becoming elite at the thing that you're doing. And the only thing that's separating you from where you're at today from where you're going to be is skills. And in order to get those skills, you'll need to get knowledge. And so the only unlock in life is how do you get the knowledge that other people have into your brain? And so that's why whether we listen to podcasts or books, whatever, the only thing keeping you from success is essentially skills. And the only way to get the skills is the knowledge. And the only way to get the knowledge is to unlock it from other people's head. And so if you follow that roadmap, things work out.
That was absolute fire. Thank you. And the last question for you, Mike, what are you most proud of?
Proud of? Let me think about it for a second, dude. Honestly, there's a lot of different things that, you look at indicators of success, because when you're not seeing it in the bank account, the only way to keep going is to have some sort of evidence and benchmark. So it's like, well, if I am trying to lose weight, I might not necessarily lose pounds, but if I could lose inches, that might be indicators of success that point me in the direction of continuing. And so for me, one of the most satisfying and things I'm quote unquote proud of is frontline team members that join and then they stay with us if they stay with us for 2 years, they get their franchise fee waived and they can become an owner for free. And so there's several of people that worked for me. They were 17, 18, 19 years old starting out, and they worked crazy amounts of hours and for 2 years plowed their head into the dirt and just working hard. And then they've gone and become owners. And, now they're doing the same thing. They're replicating that type of giving back. And that's extremely rewarding to me. And now my owner success manager that kind of helps all the owners on so many levels in terms of emergencies is actually the very first, what we call 3F program, franchise fee forgiveness. He came 17, 18 years old, minimum wage, starting out, 2 years, lived in a van to save up money so he could become a franchisee, started the 3F program, ran a profitable location, now hired a general manager and is working for corporate to help other owners do the same thing. That's like super.
That's freaking awesome. Yeah, that's super awesome. Of your franchisees, what's the largest franchisee you have as far as maybe revenue? And
there's a few that they're at like around that 3 location marker. We have someone about to join the first executive model, which is 6 locations at one time. As more like kind of like money, people with money are thinking of this as more of an investment, but we have quite a few owners that are in multiple ownership, like multiple territories. And then I'd say the most though is 3. 1, 2, 3. He has 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so it's probably 3 right now. And then I think as time goes on, there'll be more and more people that join with the expectation that just from day one they have like a whole territory chain. But yeah.
Super awesome, man. Well, again, thank you for your time being here. I told you I'd keep an hour. It's been a little bit longer. I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. Keep crushing. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you for everything you do for the industry, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you too.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. We don't charge any money for the show, obviously, but the podcast isn't free. You can pay for the podcast by sharing it with your friends and your family. So please like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. These things make a huge difference for us. If you have any specific questions you want answered about the business or your life by me or my guests, send an email to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. And if you want to get in touch with me about any personal business coaching, check out our website at www.pestcontrolmillionaire.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys again on the next one.